1993 to current, everyone knows about UKIP's success record. They can judge for themselves. There is a lot of rebuilding to do. The first one's immigration. I want to talk to you a little bit about immigration and unpack that. So second one is national security, and that's going to take quite a lot of unpacking. The third one is godlessness and liberalism, which is where we're going to go. We're going to go off piece there. And then the fourth one, because I have to have four because three is the spicy one, is housing. So we need to, in terms of UKIP's value and what we need to do going forward, we need to repeal the 1998 Human Rights Act, because that works, as everyone will know by now, that works with the European Court on Human Rights, the ECHR, which we are still, I believe, still part of, which Brexit was focused on money and economics, which was not correct. It's all about culture. With the people that voted for Brexit shouldn't have done it, and I don't believe they did it for economic reasons. They did it for cultural reasons. So we will deploy the Navy into the Channel to intercept illegals, and that's essentially via barges, and they will be pushed back to France. So they will be intercepted and they will be pushed back to France because it is a France problem. Any criminal migrant in the UK will be deported, and that will be to the Falklands for processing. So it's our version of Rwanda. The reality is that we have common sense policies. We don't have random plucked out of thin air. There's reasons behind everything that we've done. So if you are not a British citizen and you commit a crime, you'll be deported. To anyone who tries to call me out when I talk about this campaign, which we're going to be launching, called the Denounce the 1% campaign, for anyone who tries to call me out, that is always pointed at specific demographics like Muslims. I reject that, and I'd ask to stop doing that, because it's not at Muslims, it's at Islamofascism, right? There is a big difference between peaceful Muslims and Islamofascism. So expansionist, empiricist, colonializing, oppressive Islamofascism. There is a difference between the two.
Hi there, everyone. Welcome to the World of Momos podcast. And on this episode of Reflections and Reactions, we have UKIP's new deputy leader, Nick Tenconi. And we're going to be talking to Nick about what are the expectations of UKIP going into these elections, or what are the UKIP's ideas about these elections and other parties as well, and what are the troubles and problems that we are facing in this country currently, and how do they intend to fix it, and why we should vote for UKIP. So hi there, Nick. How are you?
Hi, Momus. I'm very well, thank you. And thank you very much for having me on your special, wonderful little podcast. It's a privilege. Thank you, sir.
Now, thank you for coming on. And for people who don't know, like I went on Turning Point event as well, which Turning Point, which we used to be organized by Nick. I don't know if you're still involved with that or not, or are you doing it on the side or something?
Yeah, that's correct. So I'm the Chief Operations Officer for Turning Point UK, and that cultural activist, lobbyist entity that is Turning Point, that machine still lives on. And I just so happen to be the deputy leader of the UK Independence Party as well.
Yeah, and that is really good, like, because I went on the Turning Point event where I spoke as well on the event. It was really good to see, and it's really good to see that you have gone into UKIP as well, because we need people like you in politics. So for people who don't know, why don't you give like a brief life journey of who you are and stuff like that, and how you ended up with UKIP, also telling us a little bit about Turning Point as well along the way.
Sure. So you've just asked for the life journey. So this is on you now, Momus. This is on you. Not that I love talking or anything like that. So where we find me now is a result of being a pit bull. That's it. So everything that I've created or landed has been through business development. That means creating something from nothing. So yes, I went to university, and yes, I studied politics, philosophy, and international relations.
That's brilliant.
And yes, I was incredibly interested by geopolitics and international relations theory, that being radicalism, Marxism, economic liberalism, realism. I was very interested to know structurally about how things work. So yes, I went and did that at university, and I wrote my dissertation on thermonuclear third World War, which of course is what it would be. So that's that. But the reality is that, like everyone, and this is why there's utility in telling this story, is that like everyone of millennial age, if that makes sense, we were sold the Tony Blair lie. And it was, if you are that type of person from that demographic and you've got these GCSEs and these A levels, essentially you would go to university. Typically that would be you want to get as far away from home as possible, or you want to be as close to home as possible. So I picked a red brick university. It was very good for politics and IR, got my 2-1. And then afterwards, I went and joined corporate America, or whatever you want to call it, in central London. There was a natural path that everybody did: go to university, make friends, work hard, whatever. It wasn't as easy for me as everyone made out at all. Actually, I put quite a lot of work and effort in. A lot of people say it was very easy. That's not true. But the reality is that all these people were going to do these degrees, which weren't vocational. So you were just ticking the box. Massive lie got to. So yeah, the benefit of hindsight, okay, but the reality is it was one massive lie for a lot of people, and it got them into debt, etc. So I was part of that. But look, 20 years later, here I am, and I've always been fascinated with politics and international relations specifically as well. So I went into central London to work in sales, new business development, whatever you want to call it. And there I earned my stripes in terms of business development and being at the sharp end and producing something from nothing and working with extremely aggressive KPIs and metrics. And then I did a bit more of that. So about 5-6 years in central London. The industry that I was working in, the subprime crisis of 2008 and Lehman Brothers collapse, meant that not only was I at the sharp end, but I was also told to sort of arrive at my desk every day, smash my head against a brick wall for no return whatsoever, and just pray and hope that I could just bring on clients. So I'm a bit of a wartime new business development type. That's the commercial stuff. So that takes us to around about the Arab Spring time, which is 2011, where I thought I'd rather work for myself and I'd rather start my own ship. So I did that, and that was in the field of health, fitness, life coaching, personal, physical education, mindset development, the whole piece around well-being, if you like. And the avenue to get into that was personal training, because it's very easy to get into personal training. Plus, also, I'd been training myself at that point for 5 or 6 years full time. So anyway, I built a client base. To give you the sort of A to Z on what happened after that, I built a client base. And so again, there's your new business development take on my journey commercially. And I still run a practice in that regard, covering off on the whole mind, body, and soul piece. I still run a practice there like that, which is my little limited company. That takes us to about 2000, and so you got Brexit and then Trump, and then you takes us to November 19, COVID. Wuhan, should I say. Now, something happened in November 19 that descended over us, which was the panic and the fear, and the gym started to close, and I started to see what was happening, and I could see it a mile off. This was going to end in lockdown. This was going to end in something whereby our rights, generally unprecedented, were put to one side, and we were going to be told by an authoritarian regime what we could and couldn't do. There was going to be a propaganda, a fear campaign. There was going to be bullying, intimidation, threatening behavior. There was going to be division caused within society. So all this happened. And at that same time, Turning Point was leading the charge with its graphics campaign. That's how Turning Point achieved infamy, is by world-class graphics, if I don't mind saying so myself on behalf of the team. So I saw these graphics. I saw the quotes from Candace Owens. I saw the quotes from Ben Shapiro. I saw the quotes from Trump, from Nigel, etc., etc. And I thought, I need to be involved in this. Don't know how, but again, business development. So I sat on my hands throughout 2020. I calculated how much money I'd lost. I calculated what had happened to my personal life, what happened to my own personal well-being. I calculated all of it, and I sat on my hands throughout 2020. 2021, April, we came out of lockdown. That's what happened. So it was business as usual. So I thought, well, let's see what happens. And everything that had happened during lockdown, it wasn't going to get better anytime sooner. And meanwhile, I'd been monitoring Turning Point and a few other parties and movements and entities. And so by summer of 21, coming out of lockdown, I realized that it was pretty much game over for a lot of self-employed people, 5 million self-employed people who got an absolute spanking during lockdown, whilst the corporate America lot worked from home and got paid or like furlough. I don't really care to remember, to be honest with you, but lots of people came out really great from that deal. Lots of people didn't come out great from that deal. So I certainly am not spiteful, vindictive about that period. I have my own feelings on guys like Matt Hancock and Piers Morgan and other people who pushed the vaccine mandate and were at the helm with regards to the campaign of fear and oppression on people. You know, if you didn't do this, you weren't a good citizen, all that stuff. But we'll deal with all those people later, etc. So for me, it was this needs, whatever I'm going to do, it needs to be launched. So I got off my backside, as I have done for the last 20, 25 years, and I found Turning Point's wonderful CEO, Jack Ross, and I said, can we have a meeting? He said yes, and this is summer 2021. Long story short, with Turning Point, by the autumn of 21, he was looking for a chief operations officer, so his second. I fit the bill. Obviously, no money's involved whatsoever. Tears in my eyes. No money involved. What usual stuff? Pound of flesh, no money. Yeah. He was fantastic. He was great. Such an honest, straight talking, straight bat playing chap. And we said, look, let's go and do this. And then over time things change a little bit. So I was incentivized, obviously, which is great. You know, it's great. But you know, going back to my backstory, when I was 17, I'm from a town.
It's not for money, like it was because exactly, because there is a need to do something.
I'm trying to say it without sounding conceited. So I mean, we're talking about your entire life getting cancelled, losing family members. I mean, the lot for basically no money. But that's not a slur on our agreement, because obviously there was some incentivization. But obviously, as head of activism, both with UKIP and with Turning Point, it's my job to inspire people and to remind them of their duty, which I'm sure we'll come on to. So so Turning Point, October 21, I'm in position, and from there the rest is. But I would say this: when I was 17, I met, the town I'm from is Eastbourne in Sussex, and the Conservative MP. A guy called Nigel Waterstone, if memory serves. I asked to meet with him, 17 years old. Probably didn't even know at the time what I was doing, apart from trying to survive A-levels. The most ridiculous 4 or 5 subjects at A-levels is just insane. But anyway, hopefully it's changed now. And I met with him, and he said, very simply, this would have been 99, something like that, or whatever. He said, go and become very rich, Nick, and then get into politics. That's what he said. He said, go and become really, really rich. And that was the official party line. Go and do a Tony and Cherie Blair, become really, really wealthy, and then get into politics. And it never sat well with me. So if you'll indulge me whilst I spend 20 seconds on this really boring story, it never sat well with me. So what are you inferring? That the people who have the most amount of money get into politics? I find that entirely unacceptable. What about working class or middle lower class, whatever? What about the ordinary people who want to make a difference, who have something to bring to the table? So I was never okay with that. Turns out 25 years later, because I made a phone call, because I was angry with the government, because I felt oppressed, because I felt like something had to be done, because I made a phone call, got a meeting, got a position within an organization that was there for the taking. It turns out, to one of your questions, why UKIP now, not only do I hold the rank of COO with Turning Point, but I was also earmarked due to my activism efforts and being vocal with regards to socially conservative right-wing values, that UKIP deemed me appropriate to become the deputy leader. And that's from 80 to 100 hours a week. non-stop sacrifice, discipline, not non-stop learning, non-stop networking, non-stop fighting, turning down no opportunities, making sure that you do things correctly and sensibly and law-abidingly. And then we arrive now at your wonderful podcast.
So like how he said that make a lot of money and then come into politics. Even if, like, let's say, even if that is the case and they think that is the case, then they must know that this is not the right path and they should be making better pathways for people. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you should be making better pathways for people, for the right people to come into politics, and not the people who are either there to make more money or incentivize their connections that they're made during making money, or that they don't have a stake anymore, right? So, I mean, in a way, it could feel like, okay, like, let's say I make a lot of money and then but I also have to have that character with me, that I don't need to keep chasing money, right? Let's say I make a few million pounds. I don't need any money anymore. I don't care about the connections and stuff. My money is making itself, so I'm secure. So then I go into politics, fighting for the people, right? But I will only do that if I have that character. And if I have lost that character while making millions of pounds, then I am the wrong sort of person to come into politics, because now I'm just looking for, okay, how do I incentivize my connections? How do I make more money? How do I keep on making more money? Yeah, it's a very corrupt, it's a very corrupt thinking.
Yeah, so I think that there's some key phrases here, and I'm not linking these phrases to what you just said, but crime breeds crime, radicalization breeds radicalization, and then there's generational curses, and it's the job of parents to break those generational curses. Now let's link that to what you've just said. So the premise is that become really rich, have loads of really rich friends, get into power, and then sort everyone out. Let's call it what it is. So I already know that, if Lois and I get anywhere near power, or if I get anywhere near power, I already know what I'm going to do and say with regards to remuneration and what do I care? What's one more week of 80 to 90 hours? I've done that for £5 an hour. I've done that for 20 grand a year. I've done that for 50 grand a year. I don't care. I don't care about, I want to be able to provide for my family, and I want a roof over my head. It'd be nice to do some training in the gym every now and then, although that apparently doesn't happen when you're in politics, because there's no time to do it at all. So I've gone full cycle with, not with life obviously, but with the product. I know how this works. So to your point, we need some, I'd like to give you a small anecdote, but what we do need is we need a massive campaign, a wake-up call with regards to the expose, with regards to our blue, red, and yellow setups across the country. And this is an opportunity for me to have a dig at the Tories, so I'll take it. But the truth is, it's the same with the other parties. If you decide, so I talk the way I'm talking, and then somebody goes, okay, fine, I'd really like to get involved. So you'll go to your local association, and you will find 70-year-old Doris, you'll find 60-year-old Brian, you'll find all these people essentially infighting, and who basically have ideas above their station because they're in politics, but actually they're a bit bored. You'll find these types, these people. Now, you'll find that in corporate, you'll find that domestically, you'll find that across the spectrum. But what you will not find is hungry, young men and women who want to make a difference to the country that they love. You will not find that. It's less than 1%. Now, the Lib Dems are very good at it, and locally, that's where they focus. That's what they do. It's all of the lefty stuff. So it's community action, probably a bit of global intifada thrown in there as well. But on the right side, there is no new blood coming through. There is no attraction. There is no sex sells. There is no campaign to bring in new blood. The associations probably are very shy with social media and with digital. I can't speak intelligibly about red and yellow, but certainly with conservative, I did a 15-month experiment with them. And not only is there no new blood coming through, not only are there no pathways or avenues or funding from CCHQ or the government to actually work at the local level to solve all this. Not only that, but you've got left-wing activists, as I found, in the association who were there to block guys like me from going anywhere within the party, actual pure blood conservatives. So the situation is entirely unacceptable. And our fantastic chairman at UKIP has seen in me, as has Lois, that we need to rebuild, and I'm sure we're going to come on to this, we need to rebuild the UKIP political war machine. So the general election being called, that's a factor. Nigel's move, that's a factor. But it doesn't take away from business as usual, which is that on July 5th, we are going to be looking at where we need to build our army, i.e. in which constituency, and build from the bottom up.
Yeah.
Which
I mean, because
covers off on the
that's the
stuff
thing,
we're
like,
talking about.
because how you were saying, the reason why there's no new blood coming into the right, onto the conservatives, is because it's right currently it's just filled with reactionaries, right? There is no vision. So if you don't provide vision to the young people, they're not going to come towards you, right? This is also a reason, like, it's an open secret. Everyone knows it. Like, I'm a member of SDP. The reason why I'm a member of SDP is because they have written down their political philosophy, whatever they have, right? And that they are social conservatives, even though they are economically on the left and stuff. But they have a vision, right? And the people that I see within their party are the people who are there for the vision, right? They're not there for the money. They're not doing it for the being famous or the clicks or anything like that. They're doing it because they have been presented with a vision and they agree with it. And this is what I see lacking within the right. Even with the Reform Party, it's a lot of populism going on, but very less sort of like long-term vision, and sort of saying, like, we're not just here to win this election, we're here for the long term. And that's what you just said. Like, the main idea is to start from the 5th of July to say what is the long-term goal, and that's how you win people, because you're not going to do long-term goal, or what we do from here on, or build an army, if all you have is reactionary stuff, or if you don't have a vision. That means UKIP is very much interested in building a vision and a political philosophy, revamping it.
Well, this is just so inspiring. It's almost like you've been sitting in on our strategic meetings, Momus. So obviously someone like you get it. So you understand, right? You've identified the problem. So you've got populism, you've got reactionary politics, you've got infighting, and then you've got the whole just go after that party because by definition then you look better or morally superior or whatever.
Yeah.
And no matter how many times leaders or chairmen or deputies or what, it doesn't matter how many times they say there'll be no infighting or there'll be no this or there'll be no that, life doesn't work
Always
like
will
that.
be. Yeah.
Everyone needs to say that, and I would also say it, but it's that life doesn't work like that. So you have to say it, and you have to mean it, which in UKIP's case is meant. But the reality is that there must be a blue sky. There must be, again, and this is corporate hat back on, business development hat back on. There has to be legacy, proteges. There has to be handover. There has to be hand holding. There has to be carrot and stick. There has to be in the politics game, which is what we're talking about. Obviously, it's not a business like Reform. The reality is that there has to be a political war machine, and that means you're starting with your grassroots. The messaging is clear. Your messaging is clear to your members. Your messaging is clear to the press. Your messaging and branding, I mean, is the same thing. It's on point. It's clear, and it's directional. So, for example, let's just say that with regards to what's happened lately with Reform, let's just say they return 5 MPs. In terms of deals done and bits and pieces, let's just say they return 5. I really don't care. My focus is after July 5th, as you say. It's about clear messaging and it's about strategy. But let's just say they return 5. Okay, I'm not aware that Reform have any local councils. I'm not aware that they control. Look at where I am in the south of England. This county, I think it's 500 million the budget. That's power. That's power.
Yeah.
This is what you want, and the Lib Dems know this. The left know it, but everyone focuses on the national.
Yeah.
So UKIP's strategy, which with regards to me being here, is to complement and support Lois, of course, but it's also to allow me to do what I do best. So that's building from the ground up. So going back to everything we just spoke about money and about remuneration and about inspiring and winning hearts and minds. It links also to the fighting the culture war head on, producing a cultural movement that is this infamous uniting of the right that everyone loves so much to talk about. How's that working out for everyone? Is it successful? Is it working out? How many more years have to go by before people start understanding what libertarianism causes in terms of problematic situations with regards to unification? But we'll keep playing that game and thrashing that ball around if we have to. But what I'm so inspired by, and what I'm therefore to bring to the table, utility and fruit wise, is exactly the stuff that we're talking about here. And that's the rest of my life that I'm dedicating to that 20, 25, whatever you want to call it, whatever's left years. So I hope that makes sense, Moments. And I hope the viewers understand that as well, is that the July 5th, what happens after that doesn't detract from UKIP's blue sky about righting so many wrongs from the past.
I think so. This is where UKIP will win sort of the hearts and minds of the right side of the nation, is that they have a long term, right? So personally for me, this is where William Clouston, I bought into his idea, because he rejected populism, right? He doesn't want populism. He says politics should be boring, that it should be about policies and stuff, and we should focus on the local governments. And like, people just forget about local democracy. We have the lowest turnouts, and that is the engine of politics. That is the engine of governance. Everything happens at the local level. If you have, like you say, even if you have a majority like conservatives had, they saw they couldn't do much anyways, even if they wanted to, because they hadn't paid attention on the local levels that much, right? And even especially with the Reform Party as well, which I find like the main criticism that I had of Nigel Farage was that he said on his letter on 26th of May that he's going to America because he's going to work with Trump on his grassroots level, right? Well, you haven't worked on the grassroots on reform. What are you, why would you go over there and work? You know what I mean? And that's why I was like, well, it's turning me off now, because you're saying American politics is more important. I'm going to work on their grassroots. Well, you had 25 years and you never worked on the grassroots either properly on UKIP, Brexit Party, or Reform. So that would be the little bit of criticism that I have for him, even though he is the most famous politician and he can inspire something in the upcoming election, show people that there's a way to it. All right, so moving on from that, I just wanted to ask you if you are standing in the upcoming elections, if you're standing for any area.
Sure, of course. The answer is no. So when after the news broke, there's a scrambling of the team. Obviously, everyone, whatever Rishi's thinking, who knows, who cares, frankly, just get on with it now, I think. The executive decision's been made. I have the support and backing of Lois and the chairman. It's not the right thing for me to do, to be standing, because of time, prep, and everything costs money. It's tactically dangerous and unnecessary. Also, I wanted a leadership role. I'm very fortunate enough and blessed enough to have that. There is a difference between, you can be in this realm, you can be a leader and you can be a member of parliament as well. The stuff, I'm really glad that what we've spoken about so far came first, because it precursors an awful lot of what we're going to be speaking about. We have so much work to do to check and balance other parties by the very definition of building the political war machine. My skills, attributes, drive, again, in context of timings and a few other bits and pieces, far better spent supporting Lois, supporting other candidates, and getting on with building the political war machine. And essentially that means activism and developing. That means travel, and that means hand holding and supporting, and a few other bits and pieces, basic leadership stuff. So I'm really comfortable with the decision, and there's no regrets about that at all.
I think so. It's a good decision. And actually, again, if I can emphasize on that, people need to see this as a very positive decision, because that means UKIP party is interested in the long-term game, and it's not interested in the short-term gain of few populist personalities to gain power into parliament for their own personal reasons or their own personal gains, and that be the end of it, right? So this is a long-term game, and it's good that you guys are thinking about a vision first before just standing candidates, because like it wouldn't matter, right? Okay, fine, like we can get one or two UKIP members into the parliament, but I think so it would be more effective if we have a UKIP party that knows what it's doing, that knows itself, and then can translate that into the knowing of the people of themselves, sort of a, thing. And this is what I will try to put across to Britain first as well. I think so. Having Paul Golding on the podcast at some point within this month, because I was trying to get everyone I can in this month before the
Of
election, so
course.
that people understand, like, what are the options and stuff like that. This is again,
Sure.
uh, as I repeat, like this, the same reason why I went to SDP as well, because they have that thinking, like, okay, let's work on the local level first, because it's important. That's where everything happens. So yeah, I mean, I think so. It's a more of a positive thing if you were just to stand, and that harms the image as well, because people,
Mm.
it's a very short term time. People wouldn't have known what UKIP is about, because UKIP doesn't know right now. It needs
Mm.
to revamp, right? And then you won't have got the required votes, and it would have just looked bad, right? And
Well, I think that that's a really, really important
mm,
point. So there's a number of things that I would want to convey to your viewers. One is that from 1993 to current, everyone knows about UKIP's success
mm,
record. They can judge for themselves. Um, the other very important point is that there is a lot of rebuilding to do.
mm,
And the other point, lastly, is we've got a very clear vision with regards to actual strategy. So it's certainly not that we don't have the strategy. It's certainly not that we aren't unified and aligned on the blue sky. It's more that what we all need to take into consideration is that yes, it's a very well known and interesting and loved party, but it's had lots of different leaders, and there have been lots of problematic situations, which I'm quite sure will come up on this
mm,
podcast, because obviously everyone needs to know where they stand. So
yeah.
it's all in for July 4th, certainly,
Mm,
but let's be realistic, and I think you've said it quite well. It's not that policies aren't in place; they're in
mm,
place. It's not that we're not different from reform; we're different from reform. You've got leadership, which understands you need radical change in Britain and regime change at that. So everything's in place, but yeah, the 5 weeks is problematic
yeah.
for the
Not
reasons
enough
that
time
you've
to put the
mentioned.
message across as well.
I think just at base camp level, that's
Yeah.
difficult, isn't it? But
Mm,
yeah, you're right. There is the war machine needs to be rebuilt, and
mm.
we are all eyes on 2029.
Yeah, that's the thing, and this is what I've been saying for a while as well. The main elections are 2029. A lot of other people have said the same thing as well. The main elections are 2029. It would be good if this upcoming elections turn into an hung parliament, right? So that nobody gets their way, so that nobody is in majority. That would be the best option that we can that we can get. But the main elections are 2029. So
I
build
think so.
up towards that. It would be really good. So what do you think in general then? Uh, what are the main issues that we are facing, and what ways can we go about in fixing them, both nationally, um, and on societal individual levels as well? What are the main issues that you think, like three main issues or something?
Sure. So I had a feeling that you'd say three. I wrote three down, but there's a four because we're so synchronized. Moment. I do enjoy the chemistry. So I wrote three down, but I must talk. Well, actually, I'm going to go through number one, go through number two, and then I threw in a third. So
Mm,
third's potentially the most important, but it's a bit controversial. But we
mm.
love having uncomfortable conversations. So
Yes.
if you'll permit me to answer your question directly, the main threats to, I can't quite remember how you framed it, national security, national issues, sorry.
Yeah.
The first one's immigration. I want to talk
Mm,
to you a little bit about
mm,
immigration and unpack that. So second one is national security. and that's going to take quite a lot of unpacking. The third one is godlessness and liberalism, which is where we're going to go. We're going to go off piece there, and hopefully,
I think so. I think so. That for me, that is a more of a bigger problem than any other problem, because that is what disconnects people from themselves.
Well, quite. So if I'm depending on who I'm speaking to, I might put that in as number one, or I might put it as number three. But I'm certainly not going to put it in as number one just yet, just so that everyone stays sort of fairly happy. I'm not going to say
we need to bring people together before they realize the number three is the number one. Actually,
there you go. Again, you've got the algorithm, mate. Yeah. And then the fourth one, because I have to have four because three is the spicy one, is housing. So very simply, what are our national issues? Immigration wise, obviously illegal immigration and legal net migration as well. You've got the economic side to migration, and you've got the cultural side. So this is the number one issue. Parking, number three, as discussed. Number one issue is illegal and legal immigration. We need to, in terms of UKIP's value and what we need to do going forward, we need to repeal the 1998 Human Rights Act, because that works, as everyone will know by now, that works with the European Court on Human Rights, the ECHR, which we are still, I believe, still part of, which Brexit was focused on money and economics, which was not correct. And it's very problematic to discuss that, but it's all about culture. With the people that voted for Brexit shouldn't have done it, and I don't believe they did it for economic reasons. They did it for cultural reasons. So we need to repeal the 1998 Human Rights Act. We need to get out of the ECHR. These are all things that UKIP is pledging to do. We'll deploy the Navy into the Channel to intercept illegals, and that's essentially via barges, and they will be pushed back to France. So they will be intercepted and they will be pushed back to France, because it is a France problem. France is not a war-torn, well, France has got its own issues, so it is actually at war with Islamofascism. But the reality is that the boats need to be pushed back to France. So that's something that's going to happen.
The solution is not to keep giving France money, right? Because we keep giving France money and they keep taking the piss, because that's
France owe us money. France owe us money.
Yeah, exactly. If I was French, I would do that as well, right? It's like, okay, well, I'm getting free money. Let's keep having it. So if we have to work with France, and we should work with France, but we make them realize that, well, if you're not going to deal with it, then we're just going to push it to you. And that's what we would be doing anyway. So if you want our help, we will help on your land, not on our land.
Yeah, so France can send us a few billion quid and then an apology, and then maybe we'll talk more with them. So in terms of unpacking the immigration thing, the small boats thing, the whole thing's infuriating. We will send the Navy in, and we will have it'll be a drone operation. They will be found. There will be barges parked essentially, and they will be pushed back. Okay, so there's no detaining and processing. You're going straight back to France. End of. Any criminal migrant in the UK will be deported, and that will be to the Falklands for processing. So it's our version of Rwanda. The reality is that we have common sense policies. We don't have random plucked out of thin air. There's reasons behind everything that we've done. So if you are not a British citizen and you commit a crime, you'll be deported to Rwanda for processing.
Let me just ask you on that as well, because if a foreign national commits a crime, right, I do not agree that they should first spend time in our jails, in our prisons, and then be deported. I am of the mind that deport them. I don't care what they have done. Deport them and blacklist them. Investigate all their contact list. Any dependents that are with them, that are directly dependents with them, they get deported as well, because they will depend on that person, right? it is not our responsibility, because the thing is, when we put that person in prison, what happens is, like, we are paying for his prison time, and then that person is radicalizing other prisoners, right? Especially with Islamic prisoners. That's why they do it, because their brothers are in the prison anyways. They're not afraid of it, because they know once they commit a crime, they'll get 3 square meals, and also they'll get halal meals as well on top of it, which we are spending on, which we are promoting. And I think so. It's like, it's a matter of direct deportation. And if the country is saying, "Oh, we're not gonna have it back," we don't care. We're gonna send the plane over. We're gonna throw the person out on the airport. That's your problem. It's your citizen.
Yeah, well, quite. Yeah, well, desperate times call for desperate measures. So, so we're clear. We are an island. Anything coming across in the channel will be pushed back to France, and we'll deal with reparations from the French later, I suppose. Anyone here who's not a British national will be, as you say, they're deported.
Yeah,
they're not. It's not, if they're convicted of a crime, they're deported. To your point about dependence, yeah, I suppose not. Why not? I don't know. That's a conversation to be had. But yes, we're talking the same language here, which is that if you are here and you are foreign, you are here on your best behavior. You are here on your best behavior. That's
you're a
really,
guest.
as always, there's messaging behind the messaging. It's just common sense stuff. You are here on your best behavior. So it doesn't matter. There's some important elements here. So, for example, someone on the left will say that you've got someone living here for 20 years who still isn't a British citizen, who has a family, who has a job, who pays tax, who's literally as British as you and I.
But they've chosen not to be a British citizen, right? Because I don't understand this as well. After 10 years, if you're non-EU national, EU national used to be 5 years, right? I think so, it still is. Non-EU national, after 10 years, you can apply for citizenship. So if you are choosing not to be a citizen, then that's on you, right? Whatever repercussions come from it. So
quite rightly so. I've had this conversation with many of my friends who have indeed applied for citizenship, and this is important. So take the person, imagine the uproar, someone who's been here for essentially their entire life, however that works, just continually, what they're just here, or they just continually just update their visa. I don't know how they do it, or maybe
they were here illegally, like, for 20 years.
Well, quite.
Right.
So let's just say that there's, I don't know, 10,000 of those in the UK, for example, and then one day they get involved in something, and it's real Mickey Mouse stuff, real nonsense, but they do get convicted, and they get a fine or something like that. So that the way we're talking is they'd be got, and let's say they've got a big family as well, right? And they're interwoven and integrated into society. The left and moderates will say you cannot deport in that situation. You absolutely can't. Now, to your point, and this is where I come in, I would tend to agree that actually in that case that you can't deport like that. But here's the thing, and I'm glad you said it first. This is where I come in. That person chose not to become a British citizen.
Yeah.
So actually what we're doing is saying, let me get this straight. You chose not to become a British citizen, right? So what we actually need to do is start looking at British citizenship. What we actually need to start doing is looking at what does it mean and what does it take to become a British citizen. So, for example, it's been made very clear to me within the Islamic community that assimilation is off the table right now. On the right and socially conservative people, for years we've been going after this assimilation argument, right? And I'm sick to death of it.
Yeah.
They are openly saying now, as in social conservatives that we can have a normal conversation with, who aren't radicals and who aren't part of the problem. They are openly saying assimilation, forget it. Okay, fine, no problem. Well, if assimilation's off the table, then we'll address that later. Then integration is all that's left. And then it becomes really questionable about what, if assimilation's off the table, then what does integration look like? So
but integration for them is you integrate into their culture rather than they integrate into your culture. That's a problem.
Which become. I mean, I'm quite sure that we're going to.
That's an invasion theory,
Yeah, sure. I mean, we need to talk about Islamofascism for sure, but it's very important that I said that immigration is the number one thing we need to talk about in terms of UKIP policy and in terms of national threats and in the build up to the general election. So everybody's sick of talking about it. It is not difficult to unpack. That we got to leave the repeal the 98 Human Rights Act. We need to leave the ECHR. Anything coming across illegally needs to be pushed back to France. Anything that happens here with regards to someone who's not a British citizen, it needs to be looked at. Again, there's nuances, but essentially you're going to be deported. But we need to address legal migration as well. Again, I don't want to confuse too much with stats, but legal migration is the big problem. We can worry about all these other things, but legal migration, net migration is the problem. You're talking about record net migration, responsible for 89% of housing demand, outpacing supply. I mean, there's no need for further quotes other than to look at incentivizing our youth to buy. Can't buy because it's too expensive. Well, why? Because demand has outpaced supply because of foreign imports and then it gets worse, who potentially don't share our religious and cultural values or who are unwilling to assimilate. So behind the immigration chat, once we've broken that down, we need to look at also what it means to be why are we importing from that country? Why are we importing those that so whatever we define as necessary to import, we need to start looking strategically at why are we importing from country X, faith Y, background Z. We need to look at that, and we also need to look at what does it mean to become a British citizen. And we need to ask ourselves the question, how many people are here who have been here for more than that 10-year period, so non-EU nationals who never get British citizenship? Surely that would be the first thing. That would be the first thing, day one after year 10, the first thing. So we have to ask ourselves the uncomfortable question. If somebody is not doing that, then they've got something to hide. There's something there that they really rather not interfere with the government. They would, and they live amongst us. I do believe that they live amongst us.
I think so. We have to also differentiate. So obviously rules are made for the general, right? Not for the exceptions. So obviously the rules have to be flexible enough that when it comes to it, then we can see case by case basis or grouping of cases by cases, right? But also I think so we need to separate the immigration from the Western sphere and the non-Western sphere as well, right? So a lot of like the Europeans that would be here for more than 10 years and they haven't taken residency, or they haven't taken citizenship, that's a bit different than a non-EU person or non-European, non-Western person coming over here and not taking residency, right? Because a European can come and go, right? And we have a cultural similarity with them. So it's not that much of a concern unless it's from a European country that has issues like, it might be Russia or, Albania or like stuff like that, unless it's that, right? So I'll give an example of it. And actually the immigration on the basis of skills and on the basis of cultural assimilation is not that hard to do because Poland has been doing that for a very long time successfully, right? That's how they done it. And the reason I know is because I've been married and I've been with a Polish person for past 13 years, right? And I've been going back and forth to Poland to see that. Now my wife has taken what do you call it, indefinite residency, right? Permanent residency, but she hasn't taken citizenship, even though she's been here for 13 years since I met her. So, and her reason is because she's loyal to Poland, right? So she shouldn't be faking loyalty and taking oath of allegiance to Britain. Then it's not. She respects Britain because she lives over here and she loves Britain, right? That is a different mentality because she's a very patriotic Pole, right? So it would be a lie to take it, right? So she's recognizing that it would be a lie, but she's a lawful resident of this country. She shouldn't be allowed to vote. I don't think so. She should be allowed to vote in the local democracy or anything like that because she's choosing not to be a citizen, right? And now people should know this. Like, this is very personal that I'm talking to. I'm talking against my own personal interest, which means that I'm being honest about it, right? But I think so we just get into the emotions and feelings of things and we just don't see anything objectively, right? Because let's say if in the future or at some point there was a war, which is very unlikely, between Poland and Britain, right? And she had dual citizenship. This is why I'm against dual citizenships, right? Who should she be loyal to? Maybe she says she's not taking part in the war at all. She's neutral completely, and she's just going to help people like on both sides, the wounded and blah blah, whatever the situation might be, right? But there's also a possibility that she could be a double agent, right? That she could be working for Poland. Now, if we take that apart and we replace Poland with a known hostile country against Britain, right? Whose citizens are hostile against Britain, and there are a lot of them, right? Pakistanis are very hostile against Britain, British values, British culture, British tradition. They always mock them and stuff, right? But let's say it's some country that we are already have an issue with, let's say Syria, let's say people from the Gaza Strip, that we are saying we should get them over here. I mean, it's a like, why is that not common sense? Right? So this is what I'm saying. Like the immigration, our thinking for immigration should be different for the Western countries compared to the non-Western countries, because Western countries, we have a similar culture.
The stuff you're talking about is just common sense stuff. So again,
Yeah.
look, if in terms of comparing and contrasting with other parties, at the moment, the only thing to do, the only entity to do that with is reform. But I can assure you,
Reform does not have that capacity. When they introduced net migration and they said one in and one out, I said just get out, because you have even SDP was saying, even SDP said generational gap, generational pause on immigration, right? I said, yeah, that is the language that we need to be using. Generational pause, and then let's figure out what to do.
So everyone knows the buzzword. So generational pause this and moratorium that and. So listen, I'm speaking for UKIP. So we've dealt with the small boat stuff. That is not hard to deal with. Deploy the Navy, deal with it. Then I think what we've spoken a lot of is with regards to if you're here and you're not a national or you don't have citizenship, you're gone. But there's nuances there as well. Okay, so that's that dealt with. Then there's legal net migration. The sort of things we're discussing now are we're a Christian country, and in terms of the left's latest, it's like with Islam you've got standard Islamic narrative, and with the left you've got the communist playbook, and I do grow so tired of the similarities with Islamofascism and the communist playbook. I do, and the psychological warfare. And the tactics the totalitarian propaganda tactics deployed via that method. I do grow so very tired of it. The left's latest campaign by yappers on Twitter, I'm not going to give them airtime by giving their name, but they're deliberate agitators just to be corrosive on the soul. The latest thing is, well, what is it to be British? So we allowed for multiculturalism to happen. The Windrush generation were great at it. They were brilliant at it, right? So it kind of might work potentially, but the left's yappers on X will say, well, what is it to be British? And then of course it's making the indigenous and it's making British people go, hang on a minute, what exactly? And of course they come for you, don't they? They defame you, they slander you, they bring up the fact that we drink alcohol and that we enjoy football or whatever. So I started thinking to myself about being British. And in order to understand what that means, if you're going to be part of it and going to join the club and be patriotic, you need to understand our history, good, bad, right, wrong. You need to understand it. And what you'll find is that, we create, we invent, we did. Lots of countries do that though. So, okay, it doesn't necessarily make you British. Then you've got wars and you've got colonialization and you've got imperialism. Well, I don't really have an issue with that at all. I think we helped an awful lot of people and I think we did an awful lot of good stuff. But then the left will say there's a lot of bad stuff. So, okay, fine, right, let's take that out. So then I started thinking about, well, what is it to be British? Christian Judeo values. And then you know what I thought I'm going to put a full stop there and I'm just going to stop talking because I can talk about patience and queuing in Tesco's and law and order and democracy. And I can talk about pop culture and certain
That all
musicians. And
comes
I can
from that all comes from Christian values.
you know what I was thinking I can do,
Mm.
because I'm getting really sick of the left's propaganda. You know, and then Islamo-fascists started jumping in on the bandwagon in the unholy alliance and the marriage of convenience because it suits them. So I thought, you know what, Christian Judeo values, get on that one. I'm not saying another. What is it to be British? Christian Judeo values. So if you want to be here as a member of faith, as a member of a different faith, and you're law abiding, we live in a secular democracy. You crack on, my friend, no issue with that at all. But it's time for the zero tolerance approach. If we're surmising what we're talking about, it's time with regards to immigration. What were we ever doing recruiting from non-Christian countries? So when the left come after you, and this is to your viewers, and this is about inspiring and winning hearts and minds, all you've got to do is turn around and say, what is it to be British? Know our history, Christian, Judeo values. I don't have to defend it any other way. I don't have to say anything else any other way. Stick that in your pipe and smoke it. Why are we ever recruiting ever from any other nation? And that's if we have to. We should be encouraging children. We should be encouraging families. We should be solving. There's more than enough people here to do God's work. So let's just say we have to import. Let's say we have to recruit. That should be from Christian countries, especially Christian countries who are being massacred, destroyed, slaughtered, raped, and enslaved by Islamo-fascism.
Or let's say like Christian people from those countries, right?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, absolutely. So let's start with Armenia. Let's start with Sudan. Let's start with Nigeria. Let's start with Pakistan. You know, that goes for every area.
Like what's happening to the Christians in Syria and those places as well, and Egypt, and like, you know, essentially we are letting them down, and but we are rewarding the people who are destroying their lives, right? We are rewarding the Islamists by letting them in. It's the same Islamists who are being horrible to the Christians over there, you know, like and destroying their lives. This is why I said the landscape of immigration has to be Western and non-Western, right? Because Western comes with, like, Western is not liberalism. Western is Christian, right? So the roots of Western civilization is in Christianity. So that's what even Poland said, right? So when Poland was being pressed a few years ago about why you're not getting in these refugees from Syria, Iraq, and stuff like that, and why you're taking refugees from Ukraine, they said, like, we're happy to take refugees as long as they're culturally our own, right? So
it's just basics. It's just basics. And you know, I again, I'll go back to it. It's very, very obviously, know thyself is vital, but know thy enemy as well, and know their arguments, right? The psychological warfare that the left, you know, I was thinking to myself, fish and chips, Sunday roast, and then they would just turn around and go, well, you didn't invent that anyway, you just copied and pasted. So it's, do you know what? I'm done. I'm not. If you want,
Nick, you can't do that, right? Because those are materialistic outlooks, right? So a materialist, or a person who has been corrupted by liberal materialism for so long, is the one, when you ask them what it means to be a British, they will point out to things, not to natures and a person's personality, nature, or heritage, or anything. They will point out to things, as in fish and chips, as in even cathedrals and stuff like that. It's like, no, that's not being a British is a very much of a natural instinct, right? It's very inherent in you, and the reason why people cannot explain it is because it's so natural, it's so in there, right? And you can bring British people from all different areas of the world even, and they will have something in common, right? And this is something, and people can label this as racist as much as they want. They should know that I myself am an immigrant who came over here 14 years ago, right? But the reason why I came over here is because I wanted to be British, right? Because I wanted to be part of Britain. And I had like that upbringing forever, right? Because I rejected my tribe because I found them to be an evil tribe, spreading evil in the world. And I wanted to come over here to be part of it, right? So, and then it becomes an instinct to you. But because my nature was already similar to what a British nature would be, it has become easier for me to integrate and to assimilate and to learn over time the culture and the values and the traditions and inhabit them in my own life. Because the idea is not for me to be English, because I can never be English because I wasn't born over here, but my
Yeah, of course.
future generations to be, right?
Sure.
And that's the long-term thing that anyone should be focused on, right? But
I think the stuff that you're talking about again is just such common sense. It's so inspiring. So I think there's a big difference between you need to have my retort to the left, and the sort of, you've got to understand, right? So this big question, what is it? Because this is all about immigration, right? This is all about redefining the system. What is it to be British? No more leniency, no more nonsense. Christian Judeo values and that indomitable spirit of man that exists within the British, and unapologetically, I will not define it any further. And so I think we're agreeing with that. That's great. But also there are things like democracy, the rule of law. So to all those people who want to be in Britain, again, going back to those people that are here and who are assimilated, it's not in Christianity, as you know, we adopt and foster freedom rather than enslavement. So of course, people must be free to make their own decision there. But it's the predicate for what is British and why would we import and why would we recruit and what is it to be British? Christian Judeo values and Holy Mother Church. So that's that dealt with. And anyone else who is agnostic, atheist, Jew, Islamic, Hindu, Buddhist, who wants to be part of the British tribe whilst practicing their own faith in a secular democracy, I stand shoulder to shoulder with you if you denounce the 1% that spoil it for absolutely everyone. That's it. Simple. Problem solved. And that culturally and legally and culturally and economically, things should be set up. So you go from cradle to grave, or in the context of this conversation on this topic, the encyclopedia reads, we don't import anything that we don't, going back to your point, because I want to come back on that, about where do we import from? There is nothing wrong or nothing racist or nothing we should be apologizing for to say we will recruit and import from, when you look at the map and you put your pins in the map, we will recruit from there, there, and there. And that might be to do with some refugee stuff. That might be to do with some war-torn stuff. It might be to do with some humanitarian aid stuff, but also it's tactical. And again, within that tactic is, we will address the brain drain. I am not okay I'm not okay with taking the best possible people from their, incentivizing them, not just taking, but incentivizing, because that's where it all starts, and removing them from their motherland and bringing them here and creating the brain drain over there either. So it is morally, I don't need it to be, but it is morally and ethically justified to have a conservative right-wing party like UKIP saying these common sense things, that we will look to help people. We will look to foster, if we are to import and if we are to recruit, we will look to help people. We will look to foster and embolden our culture. We will start challenging norms around nationalism and actually continue to reject ethno-nationalism, which is on the far right, day in, day out, just continually reject that evil, and it is. But we will also look to bolster and embolden our culture in terms of where and how we recruit from. It's like, for example, I've said this many times before, so if you'll permit me before we move on or break, a CEO of a Fortune 500 or FTSE 250 company, does he wake up in the morning and go, how can I end my firm? Does he wake up in the morning and go, I got a great idea, guys, all of you at top table, right, high command, I'm going to bring this all the way down and start making really, really terrible decisions culturally, in terms of the P&L, operationally, in terms of the firm's norms and values. I'm going to burn this to the ground. Do you think Bill Gates says that about Microsoft every morning when he wakes up?
You don't go against your best interest, right? So why as a nation should we go against our best interest?
Come on. I'd liken it to three things. One, the family home, where man is the head of. Two is the land, the country, the state, and three is a FTSE 250 company. Use any of those, but use any of those analogies, right? Someone breaks into my home, we've got a serious problem. Someone breaks into my country, we've got a serious problem. Someone tries to burn my company down, we've got a serious problem. This is common sense. This is basic. This is not hard to understand.
All right. So moving on from immigration, but before we just move on, just to say a quick thing, like it's really good that you mentioned the difference between ethno-nationalism and civic nationalism. And civic nationalism is what we should be encouraging a lot more than ethno-nationalism, because that creates its own issues. We have very recent history of that, displaying that today that we are recording on D-Day, 80 years from then. There is a very recent history in our times of how that plays out as well. And also that, when we talk about immigration, we're not against people who are residing over here and who are good people, who contribute more to the country and help the country in whatever ways, whatever skill gaps that we have currently, and help us. It's just that we need to build the resilience of the country in itself rather than be dependent constantly on immigration. And in history, it has happened so many times that other people have lived in this country, or we have lived in other countries, right? We don't have to get the citizenship of that country. That's the beauty of these times, that we can enjoy different cultures, live over there and stuff, but not cause troubles. That is the main, and how we ensure that is how we create an immigration policy. We don't ensure that by just staying away from the difficult, uncomfortable conversations. We have to build rules and regulations. But yeah,
I want to make it very clear. It's so important that we move on because of time, but I want to make it so very clear. I'm going to try and bullet point this to anyone who tries to call me out when I talk about this campaign which we're going to be launching, called the Denounce the 1% campaign. For anyone who tries to call me out, that is always pointed at specific demographics like Muslims. I reject that, and I'd ask to stop doing that, because it's not a Muslims, it's Islamofascism, right? There is a big difference between peaceful Muslims and Islamofascism. So expansionist, empiricist, colonializing, oppressive Islamofascism. There is a difference between the two. So within UKIP, there is no place for discrimination based on creed, background, demographic. And so those people say, we'll call out the far right. The problem is that there hasn't been an issue with the far right in Britain for some time. But yes, of course, when the MI5 watch list at the moment, there's 80 organizations on that. 70% are Islamic. 58 out of the 80 are Islamic. At the moment, 6 are ethno-nationalists. So when that number goes as high as that, I will devote my time to calling out ethno-nationalists. So
and you're still doing that, like even with that small number, you still do that, and that's the whole point as well.
We always do it. We always do it. So and the other point, again, the other bullet point is very important. Nationalism. So as social conservatives, we often talk about the importance of nationalism, and that's in the Brexit conversation as well. The truth is that nationalism is responsible for an awful lot of the schisms and the breaks within Christianity as well. So this isn't a theology session, but the reality is that there's an awful lot to address on the right. One of them is going to be the voice going forward of not rejecting nationalism. We love our country, we're patriots, but focusing more on British values, i.e. Christian Judeo values, and worrying less and focusing less on nationalism and the Richard Dawkins nonsense the other week when he dared talk about cultural Christianity. Don't talk about Holy Mother Church like that. Don't use terms like that. It's disgraceful. There is no cultural Christianity. There is Christianity, and that's where the dialogue and the uncomfortable conversation needs to travel to. And it links with making everyone happy by calling out the 1%, but making sure that people understand that the far right in Britain is here and the far left is here, including Islamofascism. So that needs to be addressed. And I'm getting sick of people talking like it's like that. Or even that it's like that. It's actually like that. That's important. But also that links to, in calling out the far right, so-called in Britain, that also links to having a sensible conversation amongst social conservatives continually, in enabling that chat around it's the wrong thing to go after the nationalism conservative right-wing thing. Actually, it should be Christianity and Christ coming first in decision making and maybe policy making.
We can talk about the third point, which was the faith point, like before we go to the second point, because it leads to that, right? So Even when it comes to Islam and Muslims and stuff, right? So I probably have more extremist views in in that regard, anyways, because I don't want Islam here at all because it creates issues, right? But the viewpoint is not like the viewpoint is Islam should not be accepted, it should be rejected because Christianity itself should reject a religion that rejects it, you know, that sort of it is there because it's a rejection of Christianity. Islam is there because of that reason, right? But it's not against people, right? Like my ideas are not never against people and stuff because it's sort of like that Christian attitude where um if you're, because I've said this before, if you're living next door to, let's say, a prostitute, right? So it's not in me to be horrible to that person, not to help her, and so on and so on and so on. But I would like her to leave prostitution, right? And that's the whole point. I would like her to become a better person and to lead a better life. And that's how I view the problem of Muslims as well. I rather them convert to Christianity, right? So, and I won't be able to say that unless I proclaim Christianity to be true when compared to Islam, right? As a
So
nation.
yeah, I'm happy to respond
Mm,
as a Christian. I'm happy to respond, and I'm happy to respond as a politician.
mm,
As a Christian, the 3.9 million Muslims living in the UK, they will they are going to stand shoulder to shoulder with us as British
mm,
patriots and British citizens. Like a lot of people, if they want to reject the flag and reject the way of life,
mm,
and potentially even subscribe to communism, far left extremism, that's problematic. But that's problematic regardless of background, of demographic. Subscribing to Islamofascism also
mm,
is problematic. So the 3.9 million Muslims, the 250,000 Jews,
mm,
the opportunity is there to stand shoulder to shoulder with
mm,
people that love their country in a secular democracy, and that there's a full stop after that. That's it.
mm.
There is no issue there at
Yeah.
all. Going back to what you said, that's the political stuff out of the way. There's no issue. The other side to that, of course, is that we should not be recruiting from anything other than Christian
Yeah.
populaces throughout the world going forward. End of discussion. And
Mm,
then the Christian cap on, don't mind telling you, it is the duty of the faithful
mm,
to convert our Muslim brothers and sisters to
mm,
Holy Mother Church. And in order to do that, you obviously have to know your Bible. You have to know
mm.
what defense of the faith looks like. And there are very good people doing that all across the world and in the UK. Going back to my former point, these people must choose of their own free will. This is, of
Yeah.
course,
Yeah.
one of the great mysteries of of Christianity, which predates church fathers. Obviously, I'm talking about the life, death, and resurrection of our Lord and
Mm,
Savior. So, well, that mystery
mm,
remains, but it must be of their own choosing.
yeah.
It must be of their own choosing. But yeah, of course, we have an absolute duty to convert our Muslim brothers and sisters to Christianity. Of course, we do. So that's the if it helps, that's the Christian input as
Yeah.
well. But
But
again,
you
it has to be of
won't
their own
be
free
able
will.
to convert unless you are knowing of your own faith, right? Or you're sure on your own faith, which the Church of England has shown why it's failing is because of all the interfaith stuff that they've been doing. It's like, well, you become unknown of your own sort of like faith. And this
Mm,
is why, to your point about Richard Dawkins as well, I don't okay, be a cultural Christian, but understand that for you to be a cultural Christian, there has to be the majority of Christians who believe in Christianity, right? And I'm saying
mm,
that as someone who considers himself as a Christian deist, where
mm,
I'm not a full Christian and I've not been baptized and so on and so on. But I understand for me to have that luxury belief,
mm,
the majority of the people have to believe it. Like, you can't continue the faith unless you have the faithful.
mm,
So, we can't all become culturally Christian because then that will be lost. It will
Well,
be.
quite. I mean, it's nonsense.
Yeah.
It was egregious. It was offensive, and well, just look at who and what the guy is. So, and how dare he sort of try and link arms with
Yeah.
Christians by saying that.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, there's a lot in what you say. There's an awful lot in what you say. Again, if you want to subscribe to British values, again, law and order, democracy, we queue, we park sensibly, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Then and you want to be an atheist or an agnostic, we live in a secular democracy, that's absolutely fine. But the reality is that for some time now, religious education in schools was not. I remember RE at schools, and it was painful. It was painful, and I was a B student at school. Sometimes I was an A student, sometimes I was a C student. It depends because I was growing up. But the reality is that it was hard. And again, I'm not criticizing teachers because they've got a tough job, but it was difficult. Middle class Christianity, materialistic atheism, the boom of the 80s, i.e. the boomers, hedonism, degeneracy. Every faith has this. Muslims have got a terrible time in the West at the moment. They have got awful battles with this, and they're acquiescing. When girls want to put makeup on and remove the hijab movement and all these other things, they've got terrible problems. Liberalism. I doubt we're going to have time, so we might have to do it later. But liberalism breeds godlessness. So I kind of want to link up to the point that you just made. Liberalism breeds godlessness. And if I may, I would say this. When I was going to talk about national security and threats to Britain, of course, far left extremism and Islamofascism and radicalization. And again, that's from the woke perspective, that's from the far left perspective, that's from the Islamofascist perspective. These are enormous problems. And liberalism and godlessness it was point 3, as I mentioned, but it kind of links into national security. But here's the thing. At some point, you're going to ask me, but link that to policy into UKIP. Right. In terms of the culture war, you can either do that one of two ways. And I hope to be very clear here. One is through authoritarian measures. Okay, we both know that. Two is the other way, which is through leadership, is through hearts and minds. It's through making, and this, I'm trying to link this to the point about apologetics and about knowing the faith. Liberalism has destroyed us in the West, and all those minorities that come from XYZ part of the world that practice their faith, they haven't yet been totally corrupt. They're starting to be corrupted, but they haven't totally been corrupted. So we all face the same fate. We can all hold our hands up, right? It's not just about putting all the blame on the boomers as much as we'd want to do that. It's about saying, right, hang on a minute. You got the authoritarian way of doing it, and then you've got the other way, which is the leadership way, which is the hearts and minds way. So it's make good buying decisions, save money for the deposit on your house. And we might even come on to this in a minute when we talk about housing. Make sure that your children are in Sunday school. Make sure they're attending mass. Make sure they're reading the Bible. Make sure you're teaching them when you read them bedtime stories and things like this. Make sure that you are saying grace, saying your prayers. Make sure you are praying as man, head of the household. You are leading them in prayer. Make sure that again, you have to forgive me. These are very basic steps, but this is where we have to go back.
It's very important because the leadership that you're talking about, this is what I was going to say, and you said it yourself anyways. It's family, right? So it's not like saying, oh, the RE classes in school needs to fix that. No, it's the RE classes within the family that needs to fix that, right?
You got it.
And the leadership is through the family, and that's how you.
Well, this is it. So my vision, when I get the rose-tinted spectacles on, I see leadership within government, again, once you're in power, as leading along these lines. And it links to Christian Judeo values, and it links to immigration. It all links up. But you've got, at the helm, you've got a family, a unit who is leading by example with regards to the importance of rejecting middle class Christianity, rejecting materialistic atheism, rejecting liberalism, rejecting drinking to excess, rejecting drugs, rejecting nightclubs, rejecting going out, wasting your time, always having to do the backpacking thing, always having to do the holiday thing. These are all dressing immodestly. I mean, I can't not think of things, but these things shouldn't have been allowed to happen by our fathers. Shouldn't have allowed these things. I'm not pointing the finger at anyone in particular. It shouldn't have been allowed to happen, because liberalism and Satan and evil is always going to be hanging over their heads. It's called free will. It's called choice. And the key thing is that we take accountability and personal responsibility. So when I go back to linking this to policy and how UKIP is going to be perceived going forward, you do have the authoritarian way of doing things. You do. The way that will be chosen is the leadership exemplifying role, whereby we talk constantly about Christianity. We talk constantly about good buying decisions. We talk constantly about personal responsibility and about accountability and about putting culture first, economy second. Now, these are concepts and not strap lines, but ideas that aren't talked about at the helm, at the center, in power. It's even when the Brexit conversation comes up, it's always about money. It's always about macroeconomics. These are things people don't understand. They don't relate to. People understand to the cultural relate and understand the cultural side of it. So if you dovetail all my points together, if you've got strong leadership at the helm in government, focusing more on culture and the importance of culture alongside economics, I do not believe that wouldn't trickle down to family, street, local level, because you can't save everyone and you can't convert every household and get every single household to start recognizing sin, teaching their children about sin, teaching children the importance of doctrinal truth and biblical scripture. You can't do that across the board as secular democracy, but you can, again, not enforce it and not authoritarian measures, but you can exemplify that behavior to inspire.
You lead by example, right? So you need those people within the parliament, and look at what kind of people we've had before, right? We had Boris Johnson. He's not an example of this person is leading, right? He's not an example of a good family person, right? A good family man. He's not that. So what kind of policies he's going to inspire, right? The only good thing about Rishi Sunak is that he is a good family man, right? That he has a good family, then he's together with his family and stuff. You can't say that about other people. Farage, he's a good family man, right? You can't say that about so many other people. So obviously they're not going to inspire the policies and inspire through their examples. So for other people to see, look, it pays to be a good family person. It pays to have a good family because you have good outcomes in your life then, right? So if we keep on making these hedonistic celebrities our exemplifiers, then people are going to say, well, that pays, right? That lifestyle pays, right? And
quite.
Right.
Yeah,
so
there's and that links to another conversation about cultural problems and pop culture, especially pop music, grime, drill, even as goes far as say hip hop and the lie that we were sold in the 90s and the noughties. We shouldn't have been allowed to listen to any of that. And there's an awful lot of pop culture now that has changed over the last 2 decades. So again, I want to link this to politics and to policy. You know, how do you enforce? Well, you can't, and you don't, and we wouldn't. So you lead by going back to your point. You lead by example. But there's all sorts of things that you do with the education system. You know, the removal of pride flags, the removal of trans inclusive flags, all this absolute nonsense that has no place in schools whatsoever. You fly the GB flag from all public buildings again, another standard operating procedure with UKIP in terms of policy and patriotism, etc. But incentivizing families. If we were to talk about housing, I'd say very briefly, obviously we're looking to build more homes, more solid, reliable homes, and make buying affordable. So things like capped interest only mortgages, more government shared ownership, so that is less of a burden on you, the individual, and of course slightly lower deposits. But in terms of the 5 top priorities of UKIP, housing is on there to incentivize people to actually want to have families, because if you can't own your own home, then you're not very much incentivized to have your own family, are you?
So and like, if I can add that, like, that's my own personal experience as well, right? So we've only recently been able to buy our own home, right? And which is the reason why we don't have a family, it's just me and my wife, right? Because no matter what people say, it's like, I don't want to be dependent on the state benefits. I don't want to raise my kids on state benefits, even though they're there for for me to take help from, right?
Mm.
So housing is a huge, like you're
It's
right to say
massive.
that it's massive. It enables good families. And again,
It's
like
massive.
if I bring in my kids and they don't have the right opportunity and stuff, then I'm doing them a disservice because they're going to be stuck in that cycle as well then.
Well, quite. So I think that what I want to do in terms of media exposure is constantly come back to culture and
Hmm.
constantly, again, coming back to 5 key points, yes, but also the godlessness, liberalism thing,
Yeah.
because we've got to stop the rot and we've got to change things. But also, simultaneously, I don't want it to become all about narration around culture and religion.
Hmm.
There are policies in place to address all of these
Yeah.
issues. Speaking of the thing about godlessness and liberalism, I just wanted to make that clear. That's not so much about policy, that's more about example and about leadership. But yeah, like with housing, for
Cultural
example,
encouragement, right? Cultural
of course.
encouragement. That's how you do it. Culture is only spread through encouragement. It's not enforced. If it's enforced, it's not culture. Then it's a matter of rules and regulations only then.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
problematic. I mean, obviously financially you get it, but
Mm,
again, culturally, so that's a nuance. That is nuance, and I think I've
mm,
been quite clear about that. But yeah, going back to your initial question, obviously we covered off well on immigration, we
mm,
covered off on housing. There are some basic changes that need to be made, which allow people the
mm.
chance to get on the ladder. You make those basic
Yeah.
changes, and then you're in with a shot. And then, of course, the other one is national security. So the boring part, policy wise, save 1.7 billion, I believe, by returning recruitment back to the armed forces. So you know about
Mm,
Quangos
yeah.
in the third sector.
Mm,
Um, remove that and bring it back into the hands of the people that
yeah.
actually know what they're doing and can do it far more streamlined. Boost defense spending to, I think, 3% of GDP is what we're
Yeah.
talking about, because I think that I am concerned
In this
about
day and age, we have to. Yeah.
I am concerned. I'm not being paranoid. I think that's better pay, obviously, with armed forces as well. That needs to be discussed. It's a bit of an
Mm,
ongoing conversation,
yeah.
but we need to incentivize people, of course. New strategic defense review and also of the nuclear deterrent as well. That's been parked
Mm,
for some time, and I do feel like that. Going back to national security, um, national service and alignment with the Commonwealth. Also, we have this thing called the Commonwealth. We
mm,
have a generation that our grassroots generation that we owe an awful lot to, especially
mm,
after lockdown. And we've got this global platform for them to network, to collaborate, to add value to. So
mm,
it's not just national service in terms of the military, but also in terms of your Duke of Edinburgh style
mm,
approach and the partnerships abroad, within the Commonwealth as well. So there's so much. The national service argument is, especially by conservatives,
mm,
bizarrely, is completely rejected. And I've had that for the last couple of years. I can't get my head around it at all. Of course, there should be national service of some kind.
mm,
You're doing your grassroots a favor by teaching them, and we should all join in being willing to pay for that and to contribute. But national security wise, it's not difficult to reel off the policies and the numbers, etc.
yeah.
And I don't want to miss out this last bit about which I am putting into national security, and that is the number one threat we face in Britain, which is far left extremism
Yeah.
and the unholy alliance and marriage of convenience, which has stemmed from October 7th, and that is with
Mm,
Islamofascism
mm.
as well. So when
As
we talk
within
about
our education system, like the Marxism, it is destroying. It's an anti-West ideology, just like Islamist ideology.
right. So again, I appreciate we don't have much time at all,
Mm,
but the conversation, go back to the key things: national security. Not hard to reel off the numbers and talk about defense spending and all that kind of stuff. UKIP's going to breed a different style of politician, so we can do that, but actually
mm,
need to go a little bit behind the scenes. We need to talk about far left extremism on our streets. We need to talk about far left extremism in our schools, and when we talk about far left extremism, for those that don't understand, we're talking about Marxist, Leninist,
mm.
ideology. We're talking about communist ideology. We're talking about very
Maoist,
specific,
everyone, like, yeah.
yeah, the whole package of
Mm,
absolute nonsense that is designed to derail, destabilize, and
mm,
delegitimize the West.
yeah.
And there are, between what I just said and that, there are things to unpack. But the reality is that we mustn't confuse the The agitation that is woke, we must not confuse woke virtue signaling and woke policy making and woke institutions and beta males running those institutions and policies. We mustn't confuse that agitation and that smokescreen for the far left extremism, whether we call that Marxism or Islamofascism or communism in our schools, with regards to what our children are being taught, what people are seeing and bearing witness to on the streets after October 7th, which is hugely problematic, not to be discussed now, but it's hugely problematic because we saw before Israel issued a response, we saw the glorification and the justification, the totalitarian propaganda coming from those communities, both far left and the Islamic community. That was before Israel issued a response directly after Hamas's atrocity on October 7th. I find that hugely problematic. So in terms of national security, whilst we can talk about defense spending and the nuclear deterrent, we also need to talk about the most uncomfortable conversation, and no one wants to speak about, and mainstream media sure as hell won't, and that is that far left extremism in Britain, both at street level and in our institutions, is designed to deliberately derail, destabilize, capture, emasculate, demoralize, demotivate the British people, the average British person, and also to capture our children as well. And I'd say that was probably the biggest threat that you could possibly face outside of the nuclear threat, surely.
I'm really glad you said that as well, because wokeism is only a symptom, and we keep on going after symptoms and not tackling the main issues of whatever problem there would be. But before we end our conversation, I just wanted to ask a very little thing. Would you add energy into national security? Because I personally would add energy resources into national security, and with that in mind, would be willing to build as many nuclear plants as we want, energy plants as we want, or any other sources where we can have energy and not be dependent on other countries.
So the wicked irony, again, we are totally synchronized. So the wicked irony is that actually immigration, energy, housing, and far left extremism all come under national security. So technically speaking, you've got to always have a 5-point plan or a 10-point plan when you're a politician and a manifesto, but actually it all comes under national security, which actually kind of makes sense, doesn't it? So yes, energy is a separate point for us out of our 5. Yes, it could come under national security. It absolutely should do. But I think for ease of digestion, we've separated it. And just so that I've said it, because we're on it, obviously we're looking to scrap commitment to supranational net zero agreements, nonsense, obviously restart fracking in designated areas, invest in nuclear, of course, and remove the unnecessary bans and subsidies hindering traditional energy, and also the renewable subsidies as well. That would be affected quite considerably. So we become energy independent, which of course directly links to national security, and that helps with the overall, whether we talk about doing backhand deals with regards to immigration. So we get XYZ from which country, and then but the prices that the government profiteers, but then we have to take in all of the let's just call it what it is. It's not just immigration, isn't it? It's the country saying we actually don't want that particular populace. We don't actually want that particular demographic, like Castro in the 70s when he sent the dregs of his jails to Miami. And again, no one really ever says that, because it's like, well, you can't really say that, and that's awful. Well, no, actually, it makes sense. If governments are doing deals and they're profiteering, and one of the trade-offs is our sellout, our corrupt leaders thus far say, look, do you know what? If that's all you want, and you just want us to keep importing the stuff you don't want, it's not out of the realms of possibility. These aren't high skilled people. They're low skilled. It's proven. They're low skilled, low wage people that usurp our grassroots, just like I had to do and our forefathers had to do all that basic stuff when you're going through college, going through university, whatever. It usurps you, doesn't it? So of course you're going to turn your head to living on the dole, staying at home, going and getting an office job that you absolutely despise, not reaching your full potential, because there are hungry young people coming in saying, well, we'll do all that because it's there for the taking. They shouldn't even be here in the first place. Simple, end of. So I hope that makes sense in terms of breaking it all down with regards to national security. Energy comes under national security, but it's a separate point that we make.
Well, thank you, Nick, for being on here. And I think so you've given people the best reasons possible for them to vote for UKIP or to support UKIP anyways, like in the long term. And we will be seeing how the project is going on for UKIP, and it sounds very interesting. It sounds like our understanding is very much aligned on what we need within the nation. So it's very good to see, very good to talk to you, and thank you so much for coming on our show. And yeah, everyone watching, catch you next time.